What's up, friends? Before we hop into the show, got to tell you about WGT Golf. It's been my favorite app and game for the past decade, and I want you to play with us. We have over 750 people in our awesome DNVR community playing WGT Golf, and we want you to play with us as well. So how do you play? Go to DNVRGolf.com to download WGT Golf. It's free to download, and just go to DNVRGolf.com and lets WGT know that you want to play with us. Download the app. Once you've got the app, go to the Clubhouse section and type in DNVR and the number 3 to join our third Clubhouse. That'll get you all the access to our weekly tournaments and everything going on there, put you in our community and WGT. And then from there, you'll have access to all of our weekly tournaments, and you'll get to say hello to everyone that's playing as well. So make sure to download WGT Golf by going into DNVRGolf.com. It's the most realistic, fun golf game available, and I love it so much because it is so realistic, and you get to play courses like Pebble Beach and St. Andrews. So make sure to go to DNVRGolf.com, download WGT Golf. All right, Mace, let's hop into the show.
Broncos country is sitting in the south stands, drinking the Coors from Mile High, the best part of the weekend. Hugging a perfect stranger as they become a friend, having a good time when the orange and blue WIN. Tuning in every day with the good folks down at DNVR.
Welcome into the DNVR Broncos podcast on this Wednesday edition. I'm your host, Zach Stevens, joined by my man, Andrew Mason. And before we hop into this show, got to tell you guys about our presenting sponsor, MSU Denver Online. MSU Denver Online puts a dynamic education at your fingertips without forcing you to decide between earning a degree and living your life. And on a day like this outside, when it is miserable weather, snowy and cold, even though it's September 9th, you don't want to go anywhere. You want to go online for school. So make sure to check out msudenver.edu/online to scope out all they have to offer, including over 40 online and hybrid programs and 750 classes. They really do cater to those that are working, and they don't make you build your life around school. They help you build school around your life as well. So make sure to check out msudenver.edu/online to see all they have to offer. Well, Mace.
No enthusiasm. My gosh. I mean, it's as far.
You want to be enthusiastic?
Well, I mean, it's not a funeral. But yeah,
is it a funeral for the Broncos season, Mace? What are the Broncos losing with Von Miller done for the season?
They're losing. Well, first of all, you're losing a Mount Rushmore player. There's no doubt about that. You are losing somebody that I think, as we've discussed, based on the condition in which he arrived, the expectation that this defense would take steps forward, the presence of Jarrell Casey on the interior, Bradley Chubb coming back on the outside. I think you lose somebody for whom you reasonably expected 11 to 14 sacks. You lose leadership, although we've discussed how leadership is going to come from a lot of places, and we can get into that on this podcast. I mean, you lose an awful lot. I'm not going to deny that. But there are ways that you can get around this. I think probably the crucial thing here, Zach, is not just that you're losing Von Miller, but my fear that they may try to rush Bradley Chubb back to compensate. And that's what scares me. I don't want to see Bradley Chubb's future and his health be adversely affected because the Broncos panicked a little bit in the wake of losing Von Miller. That's something that I'm worried about, quite frankly.
Yeah, and you have to play the long game. With both Von, it doesn't look like you're really going to have a choice with that, though, and Bradley Chubb. Mace, you may lose Von. Von may have played the last snap of his career with the Broncos. It's not crazy to say that. You have to make sure that you are nowhere close to that with Bradley Chubb as well. So I totally agree. You know what? If you lose week 1 because you don't rush Bradley Chubb back, is that a bummer? Yeah, but it's way more of a bummer if you try to rush him back and something else happens. So I totally agree with you. And that's also what makes this just such a big injury. Losing Von Miller, you lose your highest paid player on defense and on the entire team. You lose a future Hall of Famer. You lose a guy who looked incredible during training camp. And now the biggest strength of your team isn't just cut in half, but now it's riding on Bradley Chubb, who has had limited practice, one in the past 11 days, Mace. So it's scary for what this means for the team and the trickle-down effect. There's frankly no positive spin that you can put on this. And of course, Mace, the most recent news coming out about this injury is that it's a peroneal tendon dislocation, which, according to Ian Rappaport, says the tendon flipped over the ankle bone. Also, according to Ian, this can typically, it requires surgery, and it typically is a 5 to 6 month recovery. The absolute best case scenario is 3 months. So maybe he's back by the end of the season. And Von's an incredible athlete. Maybe he could approach that, but I'm just approaching this as he's done for the season.
Yeah, and again, you don't want to risk the future. Now, that being said, the reason why you talk about maybe Von Miller's played his last games because of his contract situation. We've gotten into that in past podcasts, but just to recap quickly, next year he's worth $22.125 million on the salary cap. 18 of that it can be saved if the Broncos cut him before the start of the new league year. I get into detail more in that on my piece on DNVR.com, but I would actually offer this as well. For Von Miller and the Broncos, there may be an opportunity here for a restructure. Don't close your eyes to the possibility that a restructure might happen, and it could be of mutual benefit because, Zach, if the Broncos cut Von and he's on the market next spring, he's going into a market where the salary cap could be only $175 million, and a market where teams, at least a third of the league, is already over that in terms of cap commitments for 2021. If you include the teams that have to account for their draft picks, which are about $9-10 million in terms of the draft pool, then you've got 15 of 32 teams that have some moves to make to get to $175 million. Now, they can have some of those have some cap carryover that comes into play as well, but the market isn't going to be what it could have been. So you could have a scenario where you take that $18 million that would be off the books if you cut Von, you turn $10 million of it into a guarantee, give him the chance to earn back $8 million in terms of viable on-field incentives. You get some short-term cap relief. You let Von complete his rehabilitation, give him a chance to make that comeback in orange and blue. And then if you get to 2022 and you decide, okay, we're going to move on, his contract expires, he hits the market. Or you say, okay, we love what we've seen with Von. We want him to be a Bronco for life. Let's make this work. I think that's the kind of thing that you ought to be willing to do for Von Miller, given all that he's given to the franchise over the last 9+ seasons.
Yeah, and I don't view it like that, like taking care of Von Miller, because he's certainly taken care of this year with the $25 million cap hit that he has. But Mace, it is a good point about a potential restructure after this season. Because what's Von going to be entering? He's going to be entering a free agent market where teams don't have money to spend. He's going to be coming off a year in which he likely didn't play a single game. In the year before that, when he was 30 years old, he had an 8-sack season. Von Miller is, a Hall of Famer. He's an incredibly sexy name. He's a fantastic player. He's the best pass rusher that the Broncos have ever had. But when you view it like that, that's not a sexy free agent pickup for a team, Mace. A team's not going to say, here's $20 million. they're going to say this is an aging guy who didn't play last year, and the year before he got 8 sacks. So I think, you could probably restructure to 10 million guaranteed, something like that. And that's it for that final year. But that's certainly a conversation down the road, but it may not be his last snap with the team by any means. But I do think with the way his contract is, it's not naive to say that. Mace, where do the Broncos go from here?
Short term, you're starting unless Bradley Chubb has a miraculous recovery in the next few days. If you want to be judicious with Bradley Chubb, you're starting Jerry Atachu and Malik Reed, and both of them had really good camps, and both of them even made some plays when they stepped onto the first team and went against the first team tackles. Of course, I can see the comments and hear in my mind, well, they were going up against Elijah Wilkinson and Garrett Bowles. Okay, so you have to consider that as well. But you can get by with them starting and not rush Bradley Chubb back. I think the best case scenario for Chubb in week 1 is keeping him on a strict play count. Let's just say 20 to 25 plays, and making sure you don't go over that. You are going to need to find more depth though. And of course, if you're looking at the options out there, I know I see some have mentioned in the comment section trading for Ryan Kerrigan. Well, if you're Washington, maybe you think about that, but you also have to think about the price if you're the Broncos in terms of draft capital. Is that something you're willing to pay? I think you have to look at the potential reward of this. And I have trouble giving up, say, a second-round pick for a scenario where we've talked about the offense needing some time to get up to speed. You're coming off 7-9. If you make that trade for Ryan Kerrigan, does it suddenly make you into a first-place team or more of a viable or a team that can make a deep playoff run? I don't see the benefit of it being that great, so I'm inclined to hold on to the draft picks and then to the draft picks. And if you're looking for depth, maybe give a phone call to a veteran like a Terrell Suggs or Clay Matthews. I think Clay Matthews would probably be a better fit, even though with both Suggs and Clay Matthews, and also Cameron Wake, who the Titans had last year. These are all guys who flourished early last year and then tailed off in a big way after that, which shows that those guys might have hit the wall. There aren't good options. I mean, really, frankly, you're looking for maybe another Jerry Atachu to provide depth, but if you play it right with Bradley Chubb, you're going to have him back in the starting lineup, and then you'd be starting either Reed or Atachu on the other side, and then that guy would be the one who rotated in. And so really, you're looking just for some depth here. That's all.
Yeah, Mace, you nailed it on the head when you said there's no good options, especially, at any position. If you're looking, 5 days before the start of the season, 24 hours before the start of the NFL season, if you're looking for any position, it's going to be tough pickings out there. And there's a reason guys are available. If you're looking to replace Von Miller, it's not going to happen. It doesn't matter how many first round picks you're willing to give up. It doesn't matter how much money you're willing to spend on the free agent market. Mace, the 3 names that you mentioned, they're names. Those are the sexy names. But again, there's a reason they're out there, is because they're past their due right now. So I could see the Broncos signing one of those guys, but you have to be realistic about what you're getting in those guys. You're not getting future Hall of Famer Terrell Suggs out there. You're not getting a fantastic player in Clay Matthews. No, you're getting guys who are over the hump. There's a reason they're out there. And Mace, when it comes to trading for someone, whether it's Ryan Kerrigan for a second, whether you're willing to give up even more, is this a Super Bowl team this year? Has anyone thought this is a Super Bowl team this year?
No, I mean, I think there's what you're talking about with this team. I think the realistic ceiling is being hot at the end, getting on a playoff run. Maybe you'd say the realistic ceiling is what the Titans did last year.
Yeah, absolutely.
That they got in the postseason, they won the wild card game, and then they go and they have the day where their pass rush is clicking, and they pull off a huge upset in Baltimore, and then it peters out. Now, obviously, that would be the best season for the Broncos since they won Super Bowl 50, but when I just kind of look at the cost benefit thing here, if you're talking about sacrificing significant future draft capital to upgrade this, if you play Bradley Chubb right, you should get him back here at full strength over the next few weeks. If you just take it easy, don't rush him, then you ought to be able to count on Bradley Chubb safe at full tilt, say from early October onward. So you look. So to me, I have trouble saying I'm going to sacrifice anything more than a day 3 pick to upgrade that. Now, one name that our friend Benjamin Albright brought up on KOA, and also on Twitter, but this is just a depth piece, is Isaiah Irving, who played in Chicago and was just waived with an injury settlement by the Bears. But again, that's depth. That's not somebody who transforms the room.
And that's why I asked you, is this a Super Bowl team? The answer is just no. So you don't give up future depth and to hurt yourself in the future just to help yourself this year. It's tough that, maybe in 1 year, if this were to happen in 1 year from now and Drew Lock and the offense takes the step that we expect this year, then maybe you're having that conversation. Okay, Ryan Kerrigan, a starter. Who can we give up a first to get anyone? But the Broncos are just too far away from that. And Mace, when you mentioned Bradley Chubb, Juan Pablo in the comment section brings up a good point. He says, I think once Chubb gets fully healthy, we are really going to discover if he can be a star or just another average rusher. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a great point. This year's all about finding out about Drew Lock, right? And seeing if he's that star or if he's just another guy. Well, with Bradley Chubb, now there's a caveat here, and the caveat is, if Bradley Chubb were fully healthy for the entire season, I think what Ron Pablo is saying is 100% right, that you will get to see if Bradley Chubb is that guy, but you don't get to see it if he's not fully healthy. So, but I do like what you're saying there, Ron Pablo. So, Mace, it's going to be the people that are on the team right now that really carry the biggest weight.
Yeah.
What do you expect from Malik Reed? From Jerry Itachu?
Well, first of all, I'd say with Bradley Chubb, we already learned that he can be a star because there are 11 players in the history of the NFL since the sack became an official stat in 1982 that had a dozen or more sacks as rookies, and he's one of them. And the other guys on this list, with the exception of Mark Anderson with Chicago in 2006, are a who's who. It's Reggie White, Terrell Suggs, Alden Smith, Simeon Rice, Julius Peppers, Leslie O'Neal, Javon Kearse, Dwight Freeney, Charles Haley. So I'd say we already learned that Bradley Chubb is a star in the making. The question is, does he bounce all the way back? And
I think that's 30 years.
If this were 30 years ago, I'd say you're a little worried. In 2020, I think he does bounce all the way back, as long as the Broncos make sure that they don't rush him back. And that's the thing. So we've already seen the star glimpse of Bradley Chubb. We already know he's good enough. The question is, does he make it all the way back? And if he doesn't, then it's one of those things where we say it's not that, Bradley Chubb was a good pick. He just couldn't stay healthy. So I don't put that on him. So
right.
Malik Reed.
And I think that's the point.
Now your question about Malik Reed. Well, he definitely looked better than he did last year. And last year, at times when he was a starter, it looked too big for him. And he got blown up a little bit at times at the point of attack. And that's why you saw more of Jerry Itachu down the stretch. Reed looks stronger. Looks like he's added a couple of his moves to his pass rush repertoire. But now we see what happens when he starts going against first teamers, because again, the caliber of tackles that he saw in training camp, not necessarily what he's going to see when he goes out there in week 1 and beyond. And I think realistically from Malik Reed, if you get anywhere from 6 to 9 sacks, you're ecstatic. Shoot, if you get if Malik Reed starts the course of the year and you get 9 sacks out of him, you're making future plans around him being potentially a long-term part of your organization.
Without a doubt, that'd be more sacks than Von Miller had last year.
Yeah. So and I think Miller would have had more than 8 sacks this year. But the other thing that you have to account for with Von Miller that you are losing is you're losing the leadership. And even though Vic Fangio isn't going to name season-long captains, which, by the way, was going to be the topic of this podcast before the Von Miller news, Zach and I were going to name our captains for the Broncos in 2020, even if Vic wasn't going to.
Was one of them going to be Von?
I was leaning strongly in that direction. One of them being Von. I was leaning toward, for the record, I was leaning toward Von Miller and Jarrell Casey.
Yeah,
as the two defensive captains, because you're going to go young players on offense, old hands on defense, because the defense is experienced and veteran. So you take that out of the equation, but Jarrell Casey seems more than capable of stepping up. Justin Simmons can help fill that void. The question is who fills that void among the linebackers inside and outside, because you just cut Todd Davis from that line of defense. Now you're going to be without Von Miller. And the guy that you're probably leaning on for leadership in that room is Bradley Chubb, but he's still working his way back. So there's definitely a void there in the short term that hopefully by the end of the season, you're talking about a void among the tier of linebackers that can be filled.
Yeah, you're right. And Jarrell Casey and Bradley Chubb, they're going to have to play even better than we expected and hoped they would this year, Mace. And with Von, it's not just the sacks you lose and the leadership, but on the field as well. He's a guy that dominates in the run game, and he quietly does it because he's called a pass rusher. That's the sexy thing, but he dominates in the run game. And he's a guy that also dominates opposing teams' game plans. They absolutely change their game plan. That helps free up a Jarrell Casey. That helps free up a Bradley Chubb. When Jarrell Casey was signed here, he said, I've been getting so much attention my entire career because, it's been me on that Titans line. With Von Miller and Bradley Chubb, these guys are going to make my life so much easier. Well, now you don't have Von. And like we've said, we'll see what you have in Bradley Chubb as well. So, Mace, to quantify this, does this change the amount of wins the Broncos get this year, and how many games do the Broncos not win because of this injury?
Well, I'm probably going to come in on the low end of this. I'm going to say it costs them a game. Okay. And I mean, this is as important as Von Miller is, he's not a quarterback.
Yep.
If Drew Lock goes down and Jeff Driscoll has to start,
be touching all the wood now, Mace.
Then yes, the white flag goes up on the season. This isn't a white flag moment. It's a moment that you can potentially recover from. The thing that concerns me here, though, is this. I think the defense can be good, top 10 good, without Von Miller. But I think the hope was that it could be elite, top 5, top 3.
Yep.
At least, maybe not in the range of 2015, but a defense that was as effective as the one that you had in 2014 or 2016, the years bracketing that great Super Bowl performance for the defensive side. And a defense at that level could carry you to 500 after 6 games while the offense figures things out early in the season. So that's the concern, because I think for this team to be a playoff team, I'd like it to be 3-3 after 6 games, 4-4 at midseason, and that will come a week after the bye when the Broncos go down to Atlanta and take on the Falcons. So the question is, can it still get there? The answer is it can get there if Malik Reed and Jerry Atachu, maybe they're not as dynamic in the pass rush, but they can hold their own at the point of attack. And if you bring Bradley Chubb back judiciously, and let's say Monday night he's out there and he's told 20 snaps. You make sure those are the highest leverage 20 snaps that you can get. You want him out there on third down, attacking Ryan Tannehill, providing that punch from the outside, while Jarrell Casey and Draymond Jones, Shelby Harris attack from the inside. You do that, then you do that and it works out. You've got a shot of making sure that you can tread water and with a good above average, but maybe not elite defense until you get the offense untracked. And so it costs that's what you're hoping for. That's what you're hoping for.
It cost them a game.
Yeah, I'd say it costs them a game, which puts them in that that 8-8, 9-7 type range, which means that.
Right.
And the other thing is, and I'll get into this more on a piece I'm going to write on the DNVR.com. This team, if it's a playoff team, it's probably going to happen with a late surge.
Right, of course.
After that Kansas City game in December, the Broncos close with at Carolina, Buffalo at home, at the Chargers, and depending on their season, who knows? Maybe they're playing Justin Herbert by then, and the Raiders at home. And you know what? 3-1 or 4-0 in that stretch, if you figured some things out, is not out of the question. And being a playoff team in the 2020 season might require being 3-1 or 4-0 in that quarter of the season.
Well, Mace, I think it cost them a game or two. And I had them around 10-6, 9-7. So a game, if they were going to be 10-6, well, they could still make the playoffs at 9-7. In fact, if they go 9-7, I have them making the playoffs. But if they were close to the 9-7 and it cost them 2 games, then we're talking about another 7-9 team here. I do think this is a huge blow. And like a lot of people have mentioned in the comment section on the live comments here, that this is going to be up to Vic Fangio. I think that's the biggest person that needs to step up is what can Vic Fangio do to help eliminate the loss of Von Miller? Because it's easy. Mace, I could say, Malik Reed, go, fill Von's spot. Well, Vic Fangio is the head coach of this team so that it's not just Malik Reed, go, fill Von's spot. It's going to be up to Vic to help this pass rush, to help the defense, to help cover up that void that they have. And, if there's another huge hole to plug on the other side with Bradley Chubb, then it really seems like it's becoming an impossible job to start plugging all of these holes there. Mm-hmm. So Bradley Chubb, the health of Bradley Chubb is crucial now more than ever.
And also you take a look at the defense in the aggregate. All right. You lose Derek Wolfe in free agency. Now you've lost Von Miller to injury. You cut Todd Davis. You lose Chris Harris Jr. But you've got Jarrell Casey coming in. Draymond Jones looks like he's better. You trade for AJ Boye and Bryce Callahan is back. And so last year and hopefully Bradley Chubb comes in as well, as long as you're judicious with him. And that's why I think it's still realistic to expect this is a top 10 D. It was a top 10 D without Bradley Chubb, with Von Miller not playing well the first quarter of the season in terms of pass rush production, and with a number 2 and number 3 cornerback position last year that was put together with duct tape and baling wire. I think you feel a lot better with Bryce Callahan as the number 2. You touch wood and hope he stays healthy. And then you feel better about the depth with Devontae Harris a year older and Michael Ojemudia coming in. So I don't think it's going to be an elite defense. And I think that's what we were hoping for, that the defense could be really strong enough to carry this team, but it should be a good D.
Yeah, the formula for this Broncos team was elite defense plus an average offense equals a playoff team. Now, if you're talking about an average offense plus a top 10, the 10th best defense, well, maybe there's a chance of playoffs in that, but you kind of do fall back to closer to the 8-8. So, Mace, this isn't going to be a bad defense now. It's certainly not. But losing your elite player on defense, your highest paid player, your leader, your heart and soul of the entire team, it hurts you. It hurts you a lot, and it doesn't really allow you to be elite anymore.
And how soon can this offense be average? And that's the other question.
Right.
Because I don't think it's going to be average immediately.
Right.
And so that becomes the question here. Are we talking about it's average by the end of the year because it was subpar early, but then figured things out late, figured out how all the pieces fit, saw Drew Lock take the next steps? And that's another reason why if I have to make a guess on how the season ends up flowing, I think it ends up flowing with a very strong close to the year. Look, last year the Broncos closed strongly with Drew Lock coming in there as well. So then it becomes a question of saying, okay, can we stay afloat while we figure these things out? You can't bury yourself at 0-4 again.
No.
You've got to tread water. Find a way to, in these first 6 games against, and it's a rigorous 6 games against, starting off. I mean, Tennessee may be the team that goes 9-7 forever, but Tennessee also may have had that breakthrough late last year. And Vic Fangio talked yesterday about what a different team it was when they put Ryan Tannehill back there. Right. So it's not the Tennessee team that came in here and the Broncos sent waltzing out with a shutout. That's a tough game. Pittsburgh will be tough, although they don't have fans there. That'll help you out. And then Tampa Bay to start it out. Again, if you're 3-3 after 6 games, man, I'm sitting here saying you are right where you want to be. You are right in the thick of things. You've given yourself a shot. And that's why, I mean, I don't think you're talking about this team being a Super Bowl team, but you know what? I said this team be a playoff team last December. I'm standing by it, even without Von Miller.
There we go. Love it. And I can't wait to break down this season in the coming days, and specifically this Tennessee game with you coming up, Mace. But we got to talk to the people. And I know that people are dying to know what the future is. So, Mace, you got anything else before we end this live podcast?
Well, you want to hear from the people really quick that have chimed in live?
Sure, hit me with a couple.
All right, let's start this off. Corey Jones says, looking way ahead, this next draft might be more important. We could have 3 holes to fill: tackle, inside linebacker, and edge rusher. Yep,
exactly. It just creates another hole.
Yep. Diamond Rattler says, this is a moment of distress. Sound the alert. Still, we got a defense and an elite offense. People are going to be surprised.
Yeah, there we go. We got to see. The offense needs to step up sooner rather than later to cover up for Von.
Exactly. And speaking of an offense, Jody Moncrief says, yeah, you went to a Super Bowl once without Von Miller. You went to a Super Bowl once without Von Miller, with Peyton Manning having literally the greatest passing season in the history of the sport. I mean, if Drew Lock's going to emerge, I don't think Drew's going to be that good.
And that's why if Drew turns out to be elite, then it won't matter as much that you lost Von.
Yeah. Drink in with a little bit of cold water on this. What are the chances Von is never the same after this injury? He's 31, 32 by the time he's back out there.
There's definitely a chance of that, and that's not something that I'm going to turn a blind eye to. You're 100% right.
Yeah, and that's we talked about on an earlier podcast. If Von Miller has a 13 or 14 sack season, that puts him in some pretty elite company, historically speaking. And Cleaver Stevie checks in and says, I feel like signing Clay Matthews or Terrell Suggs would still be a good idea to take some pressure off of Bradley Chubb. You don't want him to have to deal with all the Von Miller double and triple teams all game.
There we go. Yep. And thank you all so much for chiming in. I know I got to a few of your questions and comments during the first segment as well. And so, Mace, if you want to guarantee that your comment's going to be read, leave it at thednvr.com. Become a subscriber. Join our family. And speaking of that community, Mace, let's jump into the comment section. Thank you guys so much for joining us on the live pod.